Animism is a way of looking at the world and seeing it filled with persons, only some of which are human. I've heard that quote attributed to a couple different authors, which is why I haven't attributed it to anyone because I haven't had the time to go through and trace down who actually said it. But it's a good way of understanding the idea. Animism is learning to see the world through a lens of personhood and granting personhood, whether it be literal or figurative, virtually everything that we encounter. Learning to see the tree as a person, the river as a person, and each individual animal as a person. That personalization helps us to realize that we really need to be living in right relationship with all of them. So, why am I such a big proponent of animism? Well, let's discuss that together as we walk down creation's path. Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie. I'm a Christo-pagan druid and priest of Bridget.
Hey everyone, my name is Brian. I'm a Christo-pagan druid and sous chef to the Dagda.
Today, we're going to be talking about animism. And I do love that quote that we started the episode with. I think that this is one of the most mistaught ideas in modern paganism. And I'm using the ism there because I think a lot of those who do the paganry get it right. But I've noticed that this is generally confused for other things or is taught in a way that overemphasizes the primitive nature of it. And I think animism is anything but a primitive way of looking at the world and understanding our relation and interrelations with it. And I think you could be a practicing animist who does not believe that there's any spirit woo woo at all in the universe. Now, I am somebody who believes there's a lot of spirit woo woo in the universe, so it's even easier for me to be an animist. But I think it's more animism is more of a philosophical position that has theological and spiritual ramifications than it is a spiritual or theological idea that has philosophical implications.
If you're wondering the question of what does animism have to do with the chapter we just read in the ways of love, we're going to get into that further in the episode.
But before we get into all that, if you haven't already, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, whatever the terminology happens to be on whatever app you're listening to us on. We do 5 original episodes of crypto, pagan, and druid content Monday through Friday. And you don't want to miss a thing. We have our whole Druidcraft 101, and you don't want to miss any of those episodes. If you did miss some of them, you might want to go back and get caught up because we've talked about a lot of stuff. All right, let's get into it. Animism for me is a philosophical decision. And I think it's in this day and age, and extremely important to grant, especially to say rivers, the land itself, a concept of person. Because what I've noticed is that people are much more likely to condone or excuse people dumping toxins into rivers when they think of the river as a thing, or even worse, as a resource, because it's an ever renewing resource. The rain just falls and it makes the stream and it makes the rivers, and it's just always going to be there. Okay, so north of the Sahara are all these dry riverbeds that used to flow into large inland lakes, some big enough to probably be classified as inland sea, that then flowed out into the Mediterranean and out into the Atlantic Ocean. None of those rivers are there anymore. They're all gone. The Nile is still there, but even the Nile is in danger because of all the water that's being taken from it upstream. These are not infinite resources. Everything flows, everything has life. And if you tap too much from it, it will die. Even a river can die.
This is actually you first sold me on the idea of animism because originally I had I don't know, I guess more of the school taught imperialistic perspective of animism, as in like someone was worshiping this object as God. And so I always had this very negative view, and this helped me to open up and realize that that's not what's happening at all, and that the first part of it is actually a tool to help the individual learn how to live in right relationship everything in their life.
Yes.
And that's the thing, like, you have a favorite cup. We all have favorite cups, right? So you have a favorite cup. Cup will contain the fluid you put in it, and you'll be able to drink from it whether you're an animist or not. The thing is when you take it to that level of seeing it as a, uh, living cup and living in right relationship with the cup,
A cup with
help
personhood.
you, yeah, a cup with personhood, you'll be able to take better care of the cup. You'll understand, "Oh, you need to be cleaned and bathed regularly so that I don't get so that you don't poison me," you know? You take care of the cup takes care of you. You don't slam it around because you're not, you don't beat up you don't slap around a loved one, you don't slap around your cup. Because if you do, it breaks, and you go through a separation.
And a lot of people default to animism for their favorite things. That's the kind of the
Yeah,
easiest way to see it. I
easiest place to
realized that
start.
I had been an animist for a long time because I grew up in a very strong geek culture where you named your laptop. Your laptop has a name and has a personality. Like every computer I've ever had a personality and a name because the diodes just worked in a certain way and the RAM was problematic or the cooling system had its breaking points. And so every computer had its own personality. And because I was in this geek culture, we didn't realize we were doing an animism, right? That we were assigning these qualities of personhood to our laptops and our computers and whatnot. But that's really what's going on there is you are assigning them a personhood. You find yourself when something's not working, talking to your, it's where you need to be honest and don't lie. When your phone's misbehaving, how often do you go, come on, phone, come on, you can do it, you can do it. Whether or not you've given that phone its own unique name or identity, you start talking to it like a person, begging and pleading for it to behave. Or when your computer is misbehaving, your car starts breaking down, you start petting that steering wheel and go, okay, we can make it to the next stop. We can make it to the next gas station. We can get over there. We can pull over to the side and we can get there. It's fine. Come on, baby. We can get there. Right. You automatically, instinctively start talking to the personhood of that item, whatever it is. Right. We see this all the time. This is a natural instinct. And that's where I think that this gets co opted because it has to be made into something shady because as we've discussed a lot with this economic hegemony that we're living under, it requires a depersonalization of everything, including each and every one of us and each and every thing that we encounter. So we are encouraged to think of this as a silly thing. It's what the barbarians do, right? But it's not. It's very much a human instinct.
Very much.
And you see it, you see it coming out when something we rely on stops working. As a
And
philosophical oh, do you have
yeah.
something?
No, no, go ahead.
As a philosophical proposition, I find it really, really interesting and something that could play an interesting part in law. With what's going on in New Zealand right now, where the courts have started assigning personhood to the rivers and granting guardianship over that personhood to someone who's generally one of the indigenous groups in the area that have a role in making sure that anything that happens with that river is for the river's benefit, that it's not going to harm, kill, or destroy the river. And this is a much way to do environmentalism, right? Because one, it prevents us from trying to do one size fits all
Yeah,
solutions. Because I see the whole free the waters thing. Maybe we should remove the dams from the rivers. I get that. And I think for most of the dams that we built, many of them could be removed and it would be perfectly fine. What will that do to the health of the river? What will that do to the health of the land? And some dams are necessary for flood control, right? Some things are necessary to control waters so that we're not having massive flooding events and things like that. So, personalizing these, we can't just say, well, all rivers should. We need to start addressing this person by person in a more rigorous way. We can start having guidelines for ways that we deal with different kinds of rivers or different kinds of this, that, or the other. But like with humans, we start realizing that, well, this river is sick. And so we have to
Mhm.
approach the health of this river like a doctor should approach the health of a patient. And that's with that personal care. And one of the biggest um, clapbacks I've ever gotten when I've tried to explain animism to somebody is was somebody who actually said to me, "So you want me to treat a river better than my doctor treats me?" I was like, "No, that's the whole point. They're stripping you of your personhood." And
Yeah.
once you start realizing what it means to treat anything like it has personhood, you realize when you are being robbed of your person. And so, just on a philosophical level, I think it's a healthy and helpful thing for us to do.
Also, on a philosophical level, it will help you to develop a better relationship with all the objects in your life. You'll, because once it has that personhood, you also recognize that it has a life cycle, and it will be born, it will grow up, it will get old, it will eventually die and return to component parts and start that cycle over again. This is where it also ties back into the chapter that we just covered, talking about life and death and the union of life and death and its interconnectedness, and in recognizing that, like, for instance, a bottle of wine, the wine itself in the bottle has a life cycle, and there are optimum times when to drink it. And that differs every bottle, even from the same vineyard, from the same vintage, the life cycle is slightly different. I
It's one
have
of the
actually opened up 20-year-old bottles of Sutter Home, which should never be allowed to get that old, that was still good because it had a much longer life cycle than your typical bottle of Sutter Home would should ever have. It was still drinkable. I actually
it
drank it.
actually kind of got better.
It was like a really nice port at that point. It was kind of crazy. But recognizing that not only for the wine, but for the bottle itself, that bottle, once you understand that it has its life cycle and it eventually will get old and it will die and go back to its component parts, it will help people break from this permanent thinking and this attachment that sometimes they get to the objects in their life. It'll allow them to let go and not suffer from separation and the
And
anxiety
that
brought about from separation of various objects so they can go, well, it has moved on. I couldn't tell you the number of times like something breaks and I'm like, well, it has run free, or I have a moment of, memoriam for it almost in a way, or I have a moment of silence for that cup that I really liked that broke, and I
Yeah.
just go, okay, it is buried, is dead, it has moved on, and its component parts will break down and become something else in its next life, its next turn of the wheel, so to speak.
But also
And
it
that's
makes you
I'm sorry, I was just saying philosophically that is really helpful.
it also helps you in the realm of recycling. We have a lot of the bottles that we use for various magical and non-magical purposes were once upon a time liquor bottles or wine bottles that were
Yeah,
so beautiful that they're found their own life, their own meaning, and their own purpose, and that they have been repurposed and reused for other things. And that they have this extended existence with us because it's not just a piece of glass.
it was reincarnated in a way,
Yes.
because that's the thing is I've had people go, "Well, you're just using an old liquor bottle," and I go, "No, that liquor bottle ran its life, it died. It was buried, it came back. It is now this new thing, and it's a
And
new
like
vessel."
and we have a cup that we use. We do a offering to the house spirits every night of some of the ginger tea that we have. And there's something about watching when you come out and I see not see that cup that I've and I know you have too, but I have developed this relationship with that cup. And
Yeah,
it makes me smile and it's like, oh, their cup is here. And this connection to the home that I live in and the spirits in the area just all comes flooding in. And it's like seeing this friend coming back into the living room to be put up on the altar with, for that where we put it for the house spirits. Like I have a relationship with it. And it's not, and this is, I think, where people have a misunderstanding between this kind of animistic relationship and idolatry. And that's usually where the confusion comes in when you start talking about this. Because as we talked about in the last chapter, it's about relation that so much of magic is about relationships and learning to see the currents and the ways of love and developing those. I have a statue of Bridget right next to me as I'm recording this. Actually, I have a statue of Bridget and Danu sitting right next to me that I love. I think they're beautiful. I bought them from a wonderful Ukrainian artist, and they mean a lot to me. I think of him often when I see these, and I find myself often looking up his social media to see if he's doing okay with everything going on over there. And they remind me of him, but they also have a very special place in my heart. I do not believe that Bridget is in this statue, right? Bridget is a spirit that has her own life, her own will, her own ambitions. She's wherever she wants to be, whenever she wants to be there. I do not believe that Bridget lives in this statue, but I have a relationship with this statue in that there are times when I'm not feeling good and I will just sit and I will stare into her eyes. Or if I'm needing inspiration, I will turn and have a conversation with this statue. And I am not worshiping this statue. I have a relationship with this statue because it's in the room with me. I also have a Bridget
And
statue in the office.
that's also where this ties back to the chapter that we just covered. This is
Can I finish real quick?
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Idolatry is believing this statue is God, that Bridget is this statue. Bridget is not the statue. Danu is not that statue. Angus's Lou are not the statues over there. They're not in any of the pictures on the wall. The picture of Lilith I'm looking at that we have on our wall is not Lilith. But I have a relationship with these. Lilith has helped me a lot with dealing with my nightmares and night terrors. And I say a little prayer in front of that statue, in front of that image every night when I go to bed. I have a relationship with that image, but I also have a relationship with Lilith. They both have personhood, and it's a different personhood. I would be really sad if something happened to that image, but it would not affect Lilith at all. You understand what I'm saying? Idolatry is when you believe the thing is God. And we see idolatry every day from those people who have granted personhood to money and believe that that money is God. And they would thus do anything that that money tells them to do. I think of the Nine Inch Nails song as like a whole, right? God, money, I'd do anything for you. God, money, just tell me what you want me to. We see those people, and it's a very sad life because they're living in this idolatry, believing that they are serving something greater than themselves when it's just a piece of paper that has been granted personhood. And often it's not even the piece of paper, it's the concept that has been granted personhood and has been allowed
Well,
to control their lives because they're
and
not living in
that
right relationship and they're not living in
yep.
love. They're living in obsession. They're living
Uh,
in fixation.
that was exactly what I was about to say is it's not even the personhood granted to the money that's necessarily the problem. It's the bad relationship that they're living in with it. It's an abusive relationship, and they really need to just divorce themselves from the money, and they'll find their whole lives will get better.
Uh,
A lot of probably mental health too, because like a bad relationship or abusive relationship, they probably need counseling.
I have enough Christian in me still to this day. I believe that Jesus is God. Okay. And I know way too many people who profess to be Christians that have turned Jesus into an idol. He is exactly built in their image. He is literally a graven image that they have made out of words and thoughts that when you quote the words of Jesus back at them, they're like, well, he didn't really mean that. Or my personal favorite, he never said that. That's not in the Bible. They showed them the passage and they're like, well, that's in your Bible. It's not in mine. I'm like, okay, open yours up. Because you can make an idol even out of God.
Yeah.
An idol is that thing that you have an unhealthy devotion to, an unhealthy fixation with or obsession with. That has become an idol and that has become a problem. Remember, when the law was written, when the 10 utterances were said, or as the Christians call them, the 10 commandments were laid down, this was not a monotheistic religion. That's why it's not, you shall not have any other gods. It is, you shall not have any other gods before me. This is henotheism. I'm chief. I'm number one. The wording's very clear there. And even in the second iteration, where the phrasing is actually beside me, means you're not going to put any others on my level. Those are the actual commandments there, because this was not a monotheistic religion when those commandments were given. And so learning to grant personhood to literally everything in your life. Your shoes have person and your everything. And if you don't understand how this works, watch a Miyazaki movie. Miyazaki movies are the most animistic things ever because they are just rooted in this Shinto culture that he loves so much. And you can see the care and devotion given to every little thing, the teapots and the nabes that they're cooking in, and the shoes that they're wearing and the clothes that they have on. It's reverential, it's respectful because you're interacting with another person. Sometimes, like in Princess Mononoke and some of the other movies, you actually see the spirits of those things, right? In Spirited Away, you literally see the spirits of those things. But even in the movies where you don't see the spirits of those things, you can still see that reference of, I see you, I respect you as a person. And the villains are almost always the ones who don't have that reverence.
Yeah.
And the
And this is
Go ahead.
also where the magic practice really comes in and why it's a part of this chapter, because it is literally through love, the union of that object, the cup, for instance, that you're sitting there drinking from, and the spark of the divine. And that is magic. And that will actually help in all of the rest of your magic practice and recognizing both in living with right relationship with all the things in your life, but in affecting the subtle changes and manipulating the subtle energies around everything, because it
And
is literally in everything, because all of creation is of God.
everything has spirit, everything has personhood. And when I say that this is our natural instinct, Brian got to tell the cute story in the last one. I get to tell it in this one.
Yeah.
One of our cats, McGonagall, looking at it right now, loves one of our radiators. And by the way, it's a specific radiator. If we move the radiators around, she will go to it wherever it is. It's one of these radiators we refer to as her boyfriend because she loves this radiator. She gets so excited every year when the radiator comes out. She gets so sad every year when the radiators get put away. And if it's a particularly warm day and we turn the radiator off, she comes to us meowing, getting our attention and taking us over because something's wrong with her boyfriend. Something's wrong with her friend. He's not warm. Something's wrong. We need to take care of him. That radiator is as much has personhood to her. It is part of her tribe. It is part of her pack. It is part of her life. She loves this radiator. And when our old radiator died, because it was our old radiator that died, when it died, she was so sad and she did not trust the new radiator when it came into the house. It wasn't her old radiator. It took her a while to develop a relationship and a bond with the new. We have a couple radiators in the house because that's how we warm our house up. So she had choices to make, but she still picked one radiator, which is her friend.
Yes.
And
I
she,
tested that. I tested the radiator because I questioned it, and I this year I moved it. It was the one that was down the hall, and I moved it to the kitchen one. And she stopped paying attention, hanging out by the with the radiator, that radiator that was down the hall, and started hanging out with the one in the kitchen. And it was causing her a lot of distress because we don't keep the kitchen one on except for on really, really cold days. So I actually had to move it into the living room, switching out the living room radiator, and she literally went to the living room radiator, which is where the one it's the same one. It's been in 3 different places, and she has followed it and reacted to it specifically and not the other 2.
it's her friend.
It is.
And like I said, we jokingly refer to it as her boyfriend. She loves this radiator. She takes care of it. She gives it kisses. She grooms the radiator.
She
We try
grooms
to
it.
stop her, but she grooms the radiator.
She
She
grooms it.
loves up on it. It's her friend. She's sitting up next to it. Her sister is with her, and she is making sure to keep her sister at a respectful distance from her radiator because that
Yeah.
one's hers. And that's what I mean by this is natural, this granting of personhood to other things. It is a natural thing. It is a thing that we see other creatures do. And it really does change your entire way of seeing and experiencing the world. When you start realizing that the creek running by your house, treating it like a person, and the ground underneath your feet, your house itself, seeing its personhood, its creaks, its groans, you start. I think it actually helps us live in these spaces better
Oh,
because
yeah.
once you've categorized something as a person, your brain starts cataloging all the little things, and you can start seeing, oh, I need to check up on this, I need to check up on that, and you start seeing things that you would normally maybe not notice as well. And so
Also
it's a general benefit to your life.
also, you'll find yourself having more patience and understanding too, because, like, when a person gets sick and you're more patient with that person and you try to help, you'll find yourself doing the same thing when the objects around you become sick. you become aware of it, and instead of trying to force that object beyond its breaking point and literally breaking it, you'll find yourself backing off and not being as demanding and giving it that time and space what it needs to heal, and helping it heal back so that it can then be used in the normal levels you would use it at.
And so you may find yourself starting to give certain things in your life names. Like I'm one of those people that has a weighted blanket that helps me regulate the various energies in me. I have given my weighted blanket a name. Its name is Grizz. And if you're a 30 Rock fan, you understand why. I have given my weighted blanket a name. Everyone just, I started doing it almost jokingly, and everyone adopted that name as well. And it's literally that's how everybody talks about it. It is a person in the house. And I've noticed that other people have started, like when we have guests over, they don't just push it off the chair if it's on the chair, because Grizz is a person. So they will actually pick it up and move it, often even folding it up nicely and putting it somewhere nice. Like they're showing it respect, because in me personalizing it, even if they're not an animist, in seeing the care I have for it, they have adopted that same care themselves. And that's really when you start seeing the subtle power and how it works in helping people, helping these ideas to flow out and just get more people living in right relationship with their surroundings. And so we could do another episode if you wanted to in the future on more spiritual aspects of animism. But I think we're at a point in our society where people have adopted this radical skepticism, where if you lead off with any of the spirit woo woo stuff, they just shut down and they don't listen. And they don't realize that a lot of these spiritual teachings have such a practical impact on us and in our lives, that I kind of feel like we need to be making the pitch for philosophical animism. And then for those of us who live a spiritual animism, inviting people into that too. But I think we would benefit just as well from treating a cup or a blanket or a river like a person philosophically and legally as we would from having an actual spiritual reverential relationship.
To share a fun little application of this from the philosophical perspective or side of application of the animism, when sometimes when the merchant card processing doesn't work properly, and the public can get very irritated when they're trying to buy something and it doesn't work, and can get very frustrated and lash out at me while I'm sitting there waiting for their card to process. I'll make a joke treating it as a person. I'll make a joke and be like, yeah, I'm really sorry, we've been working this poor machine all day, we haven't even given it a break yet. It's amazing the psychological effect that has on a person, because they'll laugh and then they'll get a little glimmer of sadness in their eyes for just a moment, and they'll relax and calm down because they suddenly see it as a person who's been worked like a dog for however many hours business has been going on without a break. And they suddenly go, man, I would be tired too, and irritable and not want to cooperate if I had to work however many hours with no break. And then, of course, the thing works by then and they've moved on. It it just helps them connect into the moment and connect to their patients
And live in that right relationship.
and live in right relationship, rather than just giving into the anger and getting frustrated because this thing isn't doing what it's supposed to do. It's, oh, we've worked this really hard. It maybe need a break. Maybe I should give it 30 seconds and take a breath.
It's an amazing thing of what happens in us when we adopt this way of thinking. And so, if you've not tried animism before, remember the world is filled with persons, only some of which are human. And that's it. It's that simple. You can stretch this out and pull out Francis's Canticle of the Creatures and start talking to Brother Wind and Brother Sun and Sister Moon and all the rest if you want to. You can find another set of metaphors that work well for you, or just base them on your own relationships. Because after all, this is all about learning to live in right relationship and learning to have that love and respect, those deeper connections that we're talking about in this chapter. So I hope that this has helped you out. I don't know if you are an animist like we are, or if this is your first introduction to animism, but I would love to know what your thoughts are. You can let me know down in the comments, especially if you're listening to us on YouTube or Spotify. You can leave a comment right there. If you're listening to us anywhere else, even if they say you can leave a comment, they do not let us know. So leave a comment there anyway, because engagement is magic, and then head over to creationspaths.com and click on chat. And there you can leave us a comment. We will get notified to be able to respond to you. While you're there, if you happen to have a few dollars you can pass our way, we offer monthly and annual memberships. You can also support us on Patreon and Ko-fi. I am C. Dorset on both. We also have a Cash App cash tag that is hashtag Creations Paths. Thank you to everyone who helps us out. It really means the world to us. It helps us keep a roof over our head, food on the table, and it just powers everything that we're doing. And I cannot thank you enough. If you don't have any money right now, or you don't know for the kind of people you want to give your hard-earned treasure to, that's perfectly all right. But if we've done anything that's helped you out or that you think would help somebody else out, please share it with them. That means the world to us as well. Normally, when we're heading out, I say a prayer to a specific entity, but I'm going to say a very generic. O Spirit of the place where this is being listened to right now, help us to see the personhood not only in you, but in all of the persons that live within you and around you. That we may learn to see the world as alive and filled with grace. Amen.
Amen.